Hi, Tar Heels. Welcome to EDUC 689. I hope everyone is ready to start a new semester. I want to quickly go over our 5 essential big ideas for our course. Big ideas are a universal design for learning strategy that we use to help frame instruction so that our learners understand what are the most essential pieces of information we want them to learn. So you can use big ideas to frame a course like I'm doing, or you could use it to frame a lecture or an activity that you might be doing. But it's a way for you to just highlight what are those main concepts that you want your students to walk away with. So I'm going to share with you the 5 main areas that I want you to leave this class fully understanding so that you can go out there and you can be the best educator possible to all students, but specifically those with disabilities is what we're focusing on here in our class. So I'm going to share my screen, and I created a little Prezi that will help us be able to access our help students access equitable instruction. So here are our big ideas. So our first big idea is in the area of community. So community is essential for all learning environments. We want to build a positive and supportive an open class environment so that all students can contribute to building that community and all students feel safe in that space so that they can take the risks needed to learn. Learning can be risky, especially for those with disabilities. So there's often failure that accompanies learning. And so it's important that we have these safe spaces so that we can pick up and move on with our learning. Our next big idea is surrounding history and legislation. We can't talk about disabilities without talking about our history, as well as the critical pieces of legislation that have brought us to the space we are now. And then for us to really think about the road forward and where we still need to go in our advocacy efforts for further equity and inclusion of persons with disabilities within our schools and communities. Big idea number 3 is our high leverage practices in special education. There are 22 high leverage practices. These practices have been found to be effective with learners with and without disabilities. These 22 practices are organized around 4 aspects of practice. They are collaboration, assessment, social emotional behavior, and instruction. There is a rhyme and a reason around the order of these practices. And so we will discuss that as well as these 22 practices. And again, these practices work with students with and without disabilities. Oftentimes we talk about these 22 practices as being just really good teaching practices. Our 4th big idea is differentiation. So it is important that when we are planning our instruction and our learning spaces, that we think about the types of adjustments that we might need to make to be able to meet the needs of all of our learners. And so when doing that, we often consider universal design, which is one area that we will be talking about in this course. Universal design is where we are designing spaces so that it's universal for everyone. So it's not just spaces, but it could be objects. It could be symbols. So we know, for an example, that the color red universally often means help, stop, fire, right? So that might be one example. An example of architectural design with using universal design might be our curbside cutouts that are helpful for those in walkers and wheelchairs, or those that can't use steps. But then also it's really helpful to someone who may be pushing a baby stroller, right? Or who may be jogging down the road. It's easier to just use the ramp rather than the step. Then we have universal design for learning, very similar, except we're talking about it in a learning community. We're talking about providing that multiple means of representation, engagement, and action and expression. When we're thinking about differentiation, we also need to think about culture. So it's important that we think about the intersectionalities within our disabilities, because those intersectionalities help to frame the experience by every individual with a disability, because no two experiences are the same. And a lot of times that's because of those intersectionalities. So it's important that we think about those. And one of those areas being culture. Co-teaching, we will dive into all of the different co-teaching models and talk about how those can be used within an inclusive classroom to meet the needs of all of our learners. Moreover, we will be talking about adaptations through accommodations and modifications, not just legally mandated accommodations and modifications that might be legally mandated because a student has a disability, but also thinking about accommodations and modifications that you might just make because it's a good practice and it's something that will benefit the learner. And then our final big idea, back to that idea of intersectionality, and every experience is different, is to remember individualization. So all students are different. Focus on those individual strengths and needs. Always teach to a student's strength, and get to know your students, have fun, be creative, be collaborative. So collaborate with your colleagues as well as the students. Make sure the students are collaborating with one another as well. So learning can be fun. We just have to make sure that we target that instruction appropriately by making those adjustments and by teaching to those strengths and to those needs. So get to know your students and have fun. So I will see everyone online, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.